Hello and welcome. My name is Tejal. My pronouns are she and they. I'm coming to you today from Tongva, Chumash lands, colonially known as Los Angeles, California. Today's practice is meditation on philosophy of the Yoga Sutra. And for the past several months, we've been progressing through the Yoga Sutra, focusing on one sutra a week or over the course of two practices or 7 days, however it lands. And we're really allowing for space and time as we sit and think about the Yoga Sutra and their application to our daily life and practice, so that there can be elements of integration that really stick, that really settle in. And it's a perfect time to talk about this because of the whole vibe of the new year. It's the perfect time to talk about this because we are focusing on Sutra 1.14. In Sutra 1.14, which I'll drop into the chat, the overview of this sutra is around the foundations of abhyasa. Abhyasa. And when we talk about abhyasa, we want to talk about what it can be translated as. And this idea of abhyasa, which I'll also type in the chat, means repeated, continued practice. It means being in practice that can be sustained and that can continue on in your life. In this specific sutra, when observed constantly with reverence for a long period of time, it is firmly established. And the focus of this sutra is the object for the seer, right? The intention of the seer. So that it is really to be named. In the context of yoga, we're talking about spiritual practice and living a spiritually aligned life. That's always the it. So when we mention yoga being the it, we're really talking about how is our life a practice of yoga? How are we in yoga as we move through every day, every action, every interaction? And so the sutra is really guiding us towards the foundations of abhyasa. In order to be in the state of abhyasa or to attempt abhyasa, there are three conditions to be met. It should be practiced with complete faith. It should continue uninterrupted. And it should go on for quite a long time. When these conditions are established, you can be in the practice of abhyasa. And why abhyasa is even coming to our conversation today is because abhyasa and vairagya, something we've covered earlier and we'll go into in future practices, are the two conditions necessary to even start to think about slowing down or moving away from identification of the mental modifications, the five mental modifications, or the chitta vritti, or pancha chitta vritti, which are right knowledge, wrong knowledge, inference, imagination, and sleep. And so as we over-identify with any of those five mental modifications, the way we directly experience ourselves in the world, we move further and further away from the goal of yoga. And if we're not moving towards the goal of yoga, we're no longer in the practice of yoga. And then the question becomes, how can we stay in the practice of yoga? And the two necessary conditions are abhyasa, our focus for today, and vairagya. Very briefly, vairagya is the state of freedom from attachment or repulsion. So it's neither wanting for things or rejecting things. It's being in a state of equanimity. And there's much to get into with vairagya. But today, because the sutra focus is 1.14, we're focusing on abhyasa. Welcome, Ro. Welcome, Roshni. Welcome, Wincy. So as we move further into our practice of abhyasa, the check-in question that I have for you today that relates back to this sutra, but also back to your life, is where are you putting your uninterrupted, constant faith this year? And how does that show up for you? What does that create in terms of mindset, in terms of feelings, emotions, and sensations. So I'd love to hear a few of your reflections. And the way we reflect in community is to offer name, pronouns, location, and land if you know it, and your reflections on where you are putting your uninterrupted, constant faith this year. As I reflected upon this check-in, I thought that I will recommit or stay committed to practices. It's a really big question, right? To practices that help me lead a peaceful life. And for me, a peaceful life involves my relationship to self, my relationship to those around me in the near vicinity, roommates, mail delivery people, literally everyone I come into contact with. It also involves the relationships I have in society and community, and my relationship to the earth and environment. And those four relationships to me are the foundational pillars of yoga as a practice of union. So I will commit and recommit back to the idea of living a peaceful life, and recommitting to the idea that peace can come easily for some and not for others, and that advocacy for peace for all of us is a major factor in all of that. As you continue to reflect on where you might be putting your uninterrupted, constant faith into your life, into your actions, in this moment, start to settle into a space where you can enjoy your breath as a companion to your practice. And that might look like sitting up taller or sitting back further, resting on the ground, leaning against the wall, or even taking mindful movement. And as you settle into where you want to be in this moment, give yourself the permission you need to continue to revisit what comfort could feel like for you and where you might need to adjust for that. As we think about Abhyasa and its foundations, there are three foundations: constancy, continuity, and faith. Without these three, without the trifecta, you can imagine yourself in your daily routine as if you were a robot going through the motions, programmed by another to take part in your life. Oftentimes, we find ourselves in a position where it is quickly revealed, where it feels like a surprise, but the truth that this is your state of being, that you are walking and moving and breathing and feeling, and yet it is removed from yourself. It is action for action's sake. It is work for work's sake, rather than action and work for the deeper meaning of your intention. So continue to explore the breath that fills you up from the inside first. And just like the breath moves into you and into the parts of you through your invitation, sometimes because it needs to be there more than you even know. This is the same with your intention. This is the same with the truth of who you know yourself to be. My teacher says, you're perfect just as you are, and you could use a little work. And I love that because it is a reminder that there needs to be constancy in our practice. Not constancy for constancy's sake, right? Not moving towards a culture where production is attached to our value, where output is the marker of our value. But constancy and commitment and regularity for your own mental health and well-being. Returning back to commitment to self because you have arrived at the realization that that is a priority. That the commitment you have to yourself and to the practices that keep you authentic and keep you full of intention to do less harm are just as important as the actions themselves. When we think about the foundations of Abhyasa, commitment feels so strong and prevalent. How do we continue without interruption? How do we weather the turmoil of everyday life, the unexpected changes, the spills and the thrills without interruption? So I invite you to take a moment to reflect, how have you done this? Today is not your first day born. Today is not your first practice of meditation. How have you moved through the unexpected without interruption? Take a moment to identify those areas where you've grown and where you've shown up, aligned with your intention. Remember those, put them in a little pocket inside of you so that you can call on them when you need them in times of low lows and even in times of high highs. To come back to the realization that even when the foundations of Abhyasa are met, when we are constant and uninterrupted and full of faith in the practice, we may not attain the goal, at least not in this life or even in the next life. So recommitting to these foundations of constancy and consistency and faith become the practice. And so in a way, we do practice for practice sake, understanding what it means to truly be in practice, to truly be in Abhyasa. Notice what's coming up for you and where your attention is heading. And if there need to be any thoughts to bring you back to the truth of the matter. If there need to be any thoughts that move you away from negative thinking or doubtful thinking. There are other texts of yoga philosophy that address all of the doubt that arises because it is a natural part of the process to live on a spiritual path. So very simply, you're not alone in thinking This is a challenging path. And yet the practices are there to support you. Just as you have recognized your growth, I invite you to reflect on a time or a place in your life where you do move through as if a robot. Maybe because of rejection to the action itself or the outcome of the action. Maybe because of severe dislike. Maybe because of complete interest in another engaging activity, in a wish I was there mindset. But alas, I'm here. And in those moments, see yourself without judgment. Offer yourself the compassion that you would a close friend that's asking for your care and is in need. And just as a gentle, powerful teacher would, invite that memory of yourself into this teaching of Abhyasa. Describe it to them, offer it to them, and allow yourself the grace for all parts of you to commit again. Just as we are deepening our understanding of Sutra 1.14 and the foundations of Abhyasa, what it means to have an uninterrupted, constant faith in our practice, we are also furthering and deepening our education and understanding of Sutra 1.1, Hatha Yoga Anusasanam. The sutra I call on whenever I feel I veered off the path or need to recommit or reconnect to my practices. I first call on Hatha Yoga Anusasanam, the reminder to me that now begins again the practice of yoga. Now begins again the practice of yoga. And that every passing moment is the opportunity to begin again. So allow yourself a final deep breath in together. Notice what is staying with you. And as you exhale, notice what you might wish to let go of. And as we close this practice, I invite you to leave hands where they are, or maybe bring them to heart center or on the body. And we'll close checking in, noticing any gratitude you might have for these practices, your teachers and their teachers, for the yoga that comes to us from South Asia. Next breath, you might invite gratitude to yourself, taking a moment to just honor the effort it took to be here just as you are, and to send any gratitude out to those in this community for the same. You might connect to the land, taking a moment to honor the land and its bounty, honor the ancestral stewards of this land for their care and cultivation of it. And we'll come to the present with a moment of silence to honor the history, struggle, the unwilling oppression and sacrifice of all those who have walked this land. And finally, we'll close with a message of peace. Om Shanti 3 times. You can listen or join. Breath in. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you for sharing your practice with me, and thank you for letting me share my practice with you.